everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this Backyard Bulletin exclusive interview. For those of you who don't know, my name is Daniel Senner, and I'm the Community Conservation Coordinator for the Methow Conservancy. Today, I am sitting down with two of the Methow Valley's most talented visual storytellers, Sarah Joy Steele and Benjamin Drummond, are documentary filmmakers and photographers and designers who craft stories about the natural world and the human age. They have an impressive resume of films under their belt, covering a large variety of conservation issues from climate change, loss of biodiversity, and ocean acidification. This year, though, they released a film documenting an ongoing conservation story that is happening right here in the Methow Valley. So I invited them here for a quick Zoom chat to get the scoop on them and their new film. So Sarah and Benj, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice to have you here. Can you tell us how long you've lived in the Methow Valley and what brought you here initially?
We've been out here 10 years now. Back a while ago, before that, we were working with North Cascades Institute and come out here with their courses, their Spring Naturalist Retreat and others, and fell in love with this place, the natural history of it, and so made the leap when we realized that we could do our storytelling really from anywhere. And so we've made Methow our base of operations for the last decade or so.
That's awesome. It is so great to have you both in the community. I think one of the really cool and special things about the Methow Valley is all of the extremely talented people that choose to live or spend a lot of time here. But since everyone is so independent and productive, you don't really realize that all these professionals are here unless you make a conscious effort to find them. So thanks for introducing yourselves. Your relationship is unique in that you work together in both a family and a creative partnership. What do you like about working together, and what do you each bring to the creative table?
Well, that's kind of a funny question. So I feel like Benj and I have been collaborating on projects together ever since we met back in college. So we've really never known it any other way. We've kind of always worked together, and as a result, there's not a whole lot of separation between kind of our work life and our family life, for better or worse. Whether we're parenting or making films or doing any of the other things we do, kind of in an average day, they kind of all blend together. But when we are doing film work, there is a little bit more separation between the different jobs that we do. I do more of the story side of things, storytelling end of things, and Benj is more of the visual guy. And so when we're making a story, I spend a lot of time in pre-production up front, sort of figuring out what exactly is the story here. What do we want to say? Who do we want to say that? I sculpt the interviews. I do the interviews, and then I film. I turn all of that material into what we call a radio edit. So we do all the audio side of things first, and then Benj will take that radio edit and he'll lay down music on top of it, and he'll add the visuals to it. So that's kind of how, I guess, our roles are different from each other when we're in the film, wearing our filmmaking hats.
Well, it seems to work extremely well. So whatever the secret really is, keep it up.
Thanks.
You two have created a variety of films covering conservation issues from all around the world. A few years ago, though, you made a more local film in support of the now successful Methow Headwaters campaign. At the time the film was released, there was still a very real threat of industrial scale mining on Flag Mountain above Mazama. I'm just wondering, does working on conservation issues so physically close to home feel any different from working on stories that are farther away?
I think
Go ahead.
I would guess that we have different answers to that one, so I'll go first. For me, I think one of the big things that felt very different for me about working on the Methow Headwaters film is that most of the topics and challenges that we tell stories about don't have a super tangible victory component to them. There's not like oh, we did it. It's kind of, when you're talking about climate change or ocean acidification or biodiversity loss, there certainly are victories, but they're more small and incremental. And so being able to work on a project that had such a tangible victory that we were able to see, protection of the headwaters from industrial scale mining, that was pretty special. And I feel like during this pandemic, we've been, I guess, reminded just again and again, like what an amazing and special place we live in, how grateful we are for living here. And I guess I think a lot about that. I think about like that it's going to be protected for future generations from industrial scale mining. It's just kind of constantly thought about that over these last months and almost a year now.
Yeah, it was an incredible victory. And you're right, that is such a different end to so many of the issues that you've covered on different films. So how do you connect then to kind of those stories that don't have an endpoint? In the film we'll be talking about later, that's a story that doesn't have an endpoint. So how do you,
I think that's the age-old question with any of these big long-term challenges. Like, do you just go cry in your soup, or do you step up and do the part you can do? And I think that's what keeps us going is trying to tease out ways to make these big topics accessible and interesting to people who may not otherwise be thinking about them on a day-to-day basis. And so much of the storytelling we end up doing is where we take somewhat invisible science and trying to make it real and tangible to people who are not necessarily doing the research themselves, but have a stake in kind of issues of global change.
Just to add to that a little bit, I would say that I think Maggie, in that second Methow Headwaters film we did that kind of happened after the withdrawal was complete, said that the Methow isn't this way by accident. I don't remember her exact words, but she said it's not this way by accident. It's taken a lot of people a lot of time and energy over the years, kind of again and again visualizing what they want it to be and kind of making that happen. And I think that's what we need to do with a lot of these issues, right, that don't have such a tangible victory at the end, is just that constant attending to your vision, attending to what we want for our future and for our kids' futures. And
it almost makes your film work and storytelling more important to those issues that may not have, a finite end, because you're keeping people engaged on something that's all around us and just has a long shelf life. Those are all great lessons. Do you guys have any other kind of takeaways from working on the Methow Headwaters?
Just on a personal level, it was harder for me in some ways to work visually in a landscape I knew well, because my expectations for what I hoped to capture, what I knew it could be, were so much higher than some new place that I was just parachuting in for a week or something, and you have fresh eyes and you get what you get. When you're working in a landscape, it changes things. So
your visuals were absolutely stunning in that work. When I think about Flag Mountain now, I think about your photographs. So
it's hard to go wrong up there.
I think the other takeaway for me was, I think there was a lot of bipartisan collaboration with the Headwaters campaign, and that's something that is pretty rare. Right now there's a lot of polarization on different issues, including with wolves. That's certainly relevant with wolves. And I think that just, in this rare case, like with the Headwaters, it was people were able to come together around a common vision and get a lot done when they came together around that common vision. And so I think that's just a good reminder of how much we can do if we can find that common ground, how much we can actually accomplish.
Absolutely. I think the Methow community really coalesced around that campaign and really proved to ourselves, that we're capable of standing up for the valley that we want to see in the future. And that will definitely be needed going forward. So it was, really important for a lot of reasons. Switching to your most recent project, How to Count a Wolf. It also covers another local hot button conservation issue, the recent recolonization of wolves to Washington state. Can you tell us a little bit about this project and what drew you to it?
Well, it wasn't supposed to be a film. It was just supposed to be a scene in a different film. Because we've been working for the last year or so with the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife on their predator prey project that they are embarking on in collaboration with the University of Washington. And the wolf data is part of that bigger story. And so I went to Omak Airport to meet the wolf team as they were setting up their helicopter and learning about the work that they do to track wolves within the state and maintain collars on those animals. It was very clear that this was a much bigger story than could fit in that other film. And so we started talking about just kind of doing a standalone piece that really tried to communicate how they know what they know about wolves in Washington, because it's not an easy job trying to keep track of the number of individuals that are coming back into the state and the new packs that are splitting off and moving into new territories. So they have a big lift, and they have a lot of eyeballs watching them very carefully, and so they wanted to share some of their methodologies with the public and help folks understand how they try to get their minimum counts every year.
Yeah, I definitely learned a lot about, how the logistics of how they, do their studies. It was really fascinating. And wolves are just, as you said, not an easy subject to cover. There are so many emotions on all sides. And I think you guys, though, did just such an incredible job of capturing the nuance of the wolf predicament while also, staying true to kind of their biology and the reality that these are wild animals who don't operate by human rules. I just think you captured that so well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Watching the film, I was impressed with how much of the filming was done out in the field with the WDFW biologists. So I'm curious, how much time did you spend with them? And what are the logistics like of bringing a filming operation to wolf research?
Well, actually, we don't get a lot of credit for that. We only worked with them for about 3 days. And part of the reason for that was there's no room for us in that helicopter, nor do I want to get in that helicopter, because they do some pretty wild flying. But what we did do is we set up cameras within the helicopter and got them set up to film some of their work on their own. And then we brought all that footage back and built the story. So we got out with them physically to go track the loop pack for one day. And we set the audio moth recorders in the Methow with them for a day. And then we had a friend go up for their aerial surveys in a fixed wing airplane. So those were the kind of the primary opportunities we had to shoot it. But the most amazing stuff came from the field technicians themselves, and they did just an amazing job adding one more tool to their toolbox and one more responsibility on what are pretty hard days.
Yeah, well, they're probably used to working with remote game cameras, but probably not high quality resolution film cameras and stuff like that. So Yeah, the footage that you guys were able to capture was stunning, and just really showed the kind of the rugged beauty of these animals in the landscape that they inhabit. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Was the one day you went on the helicopter, were there any scary moments?
We didn't get in the helicopter.
Oh,
We were
you didn't? Okay.
not invited, and that's just fine.
Yeah.
But it yeah, it's they do some quite extreme flying to get access to individual animals. So what they're doing with the helicopters, they're trying to either replace or install collars on individual animals, and they do that in the winter when the snow slows them down a little bit, which gives them a fighting chance of actually catching them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so a lot of our work was hanging out at the airport and swapping batteries and cards out as they would come back to refuel. And yeah,
Yep.
it was stunning footage to go through and just try to experience what they do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it was powerful for sure. I really liked how you guys used these three, I think they're all state biologists, Ben, Trent, and Gabe, to kind of narrate the story of these animals and our efforts to understand them. What can you tell us about our state's wolf professionals and their dedication to this work?
Um, I think that story is best told through Trent's story, maybe. So Trent is one of the wildlife biologists that you see in the film. He's the gunner who, while they're darting wolves, is the guy who's actually doing the physical darting of them. And as a young wildlife biologist, he told me in his interview, like, he really thought, like, that's the goal. Like, how amazing would it be to be up in a helicopter, darting a carnivore? Like, what a thrill, like, how exciting. And when he actually achieved that goal and started doing that and did it over and over and over again, he started thinking a lot harder about it. And he realized, like, how dangerous it is for the people who do that, and also that it's fairly invasive for the animal as well. There's certainly a time and a reason to do that, but he started questioning, kind of, is there a way that we can gather this information that's a little bit less invasive and has a little bit less impact? And he went back to school. He went to graduate school at the UW, kind of looking into less invasive methods for monitoring wolves. And initially he started looking into camera trapping, and kind of how camera traps could be used to monitor wolves effectively. And then one day he was at a presentation by someone who was doing bird research. It was someone from a different university that was doing bird research using these little audio recorders called audio moths that they put out onto the landscape. And he kind of had this epiphany sitting there, like, wow, wolves vocalize. Could I use audio moths to study wolves, where wolves are and where wolves aren't? And would that be an effective method? And so we started looking more and more into that. And you can learn a little bit more about that in the film, but they are now kind of piloting using audio moths to do wolf research. So I think kind of, that dedication and movement that it takes to kind of move past your own personal dream into, like, kind of thinking about, okay, like, what am I really trying to achieve here? Is this the most effective way to do this? Is this, what kind of an impact is this having on the species that I'm studying? How can we do it better? How can we be more effective in our work? It just, that level of dedication was really kind of inspiring to me as we were working on this project.
Yeah, it's not an easy job any way you slice it. I mean, even technically or physically in the day-to-day, if you're hanging out of a helicopter flying through the mountains in the winter, like, none of this is comfortable work. But yet these guys have absolutely dedicated themselves to trying to keep track of the wolf population in the state and try to find a way to succeed in a really complicated situation. And as they say in the film, just make wolves another critter on the landscape. And
Yeah,
so it was pretty awesome to see that dedication.
that
It's
is.
a tough position, I feel like, because people who love wolves don't particularly think they're doing a great job with management, and people who hate wolves don't particularly think they're doing a great job with management. So they don't get a lot of positive sort of feedback for their work, but they still have to get up every morning and do the hard work, and I think that the level of dedication that takes is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it takes a lot of awareness, and kind of the line that really stuck out to me was that this data that they're collecting is for everybody. Everybody, no matter where you are, on kind of the wolf issue, is interested in what the wolves are doing on the landscape. And that just really struck like how important what they're doing is.
Yeah.
And I really hope that, they feel like this film and other outreach around their work helps people to understand that they are public servants better. And hopefully this gives them support and confidence in the work that they're doing.
I hope so too.
Yeah. So with wolf numbers steadily increasing in Washington state, it feels like in a lot of ways, the story of how to count a wolf is just beginning. What do you see as the next chapter in that story? And do you have plans to be part of telling it?
Well, there is a very distinct next chapter for us, which is going back to the original film that we started on before we got distracted by the wolf works, and that's the Predator Prey Project, which I know you've been talking about through the Conservancy here in the Methow. It's been going on for a while, and there's been a number of events on that. And what that really is that's this landscape level analysis of not just who's eating who, but really kind of larger population dynamics, both in Northeast Washington and also in the Okanagan area at the Methow. And that ties back to the wolf work in that, as wolves recolonize this area, what happens to the prey species that are here, but also what happens to the other predators? What happens to cougars and also the smaller carnivores? Like what do those dynamics look like? Which is really a good fit for an agency that is tasked with managing wildlife at a large scale, at a landscape level. So it's really landscape level science for landscape level management, which is super exciting because researchers don't get too many opportunities to really zoom out and look at bigger questions instead of little very specific research topics. So it was a super exciting story to get to dive into, and that film is close, and we expect that to come out in the next month or two. So
very cool. I'm very excited to watch that film, and maybe we can work together on finding a COVID safe way to kind of celebrate that film with your project partners and the community of the Methow Valley.
That would be so cool.
That'd be
Yeah,
awesome.
I'd love to bring some of the wolf biologists and other, biologists that we've been working with on that film and this wolf one in for our presentation sometime. It'd be a great event.
A lot of cool folks
Awesome.
involved. Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's work on that. Sara, Benj, thank you so much for talking with me today. And I encourage everybody out there to scroll down and watch the short film, How to Count a Wolf, and to look and listen to your surroundings in a new way. So until next time, thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you.